Good morning and welcome to Saturday special of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. There is an ancient Sanskrit text, Manusmriti, and it has been a subject of great controversy. It's reviled and it's respected. But the people who revile it essentially don't understand. They are cherry picking certain places because any book would reflect the times. And that's why even the words used by great writers like Shakespeare and others now are being deleted. But that is not the fault of those people. Manusmriti is possibly the first book, along with Moses' Code of Conduct. This is the first codified book, codified laws, codified system. The West always thinks that the Code Napoleon was the first codified in a proper format the system of administration. No. As a matter of fact, Manusmriti was the first one. And if it criticizes women and Shudras, the fourth caste, the outcasts at that time, that was because of the topical reasons and the prevailing institutions. And when the university's vice chancellor, for example, the JNU's vice chancellor, condemned it, that it has a gender bias, what about the status of women at that time? Was there no gender bias at that time, or is there no gender bias now? What is Manusmriti? That's a major question. The Manav Dharma Shastra, which is known popularly as Manusmriti, or the laws of Manu, is a Sanskrit text belonging to Dharma Shastra literary tradition of Hinduism. Now, Manav Dharma Shastra, Manav is humanity, Dharma is religion or ethics. So this is a book dealing with the human ethics, the whole human society, not only with Hinduism. And it was composed sometime between the 2nd century before Christ and the 3rd century before Christ. That to stay about 5,000 years back. And the whole book is written in shloka verses containing two non-rhyming lines of 16 syllables each. 16 syllables in each line, two lines non-rhyming, and the shloka. And the text is attributed to the mythical figure of Manu. And who was Manu? Manu is considered to be the ancestor of human race in Hinduism, as Adam is deemed to be the ancestor of human race in Abrahamic religions. So that's it. It is alternate to that. And there has been a considerable debate about the scholars on the authorship of the book. People say, majority of the people, that it is compiled by many Brahmin scholars and it was written over a period of time. It's not one time work. Nevertheless, when we study the structure of the book, when we study the format of the book, when we study the sequential order of the book, then that opinion of the majority is not acceptable. And I fully agree with Indologist Patrick Olivelle, who argues that Manusmriti is unique and symmetrical structure means it was composed by a single gifted individual. Or, quite possible, there was a committee which wrote it at one time, but The committee was headed by a very strong person who had an iron rule, and that's why the symmetry was there. Now, what's the text about? Why criticize it? There are various aspects of it. The first is the social laws. Manusmriti, a Manav Dharma, is encyclopedic in its scope and covers such subjects as social obligations and the duties of the various castes. What do the Brahmins do? What should the Kshatriyas do? What should the Vaishyas do? So it was basically delineating the duties, the responsibilities, and the way of checking those duties. It was an audit of the jobs done. It was, you can say, a book of human resource management. Of course, the management was not of the individuals, but of the system. Of course, even when you lay down the ethics, even now in an organization, it is about the system and not about the individual. So it was about the duties of the various castes and of the individuals in different stages of life. The whole thing is systematically laid out so that you can see, well, here the person has faltered and has not lived up to the expectation. It lays on the parameters for analysis, for judgment, and for ensuring proper adherence to the system. Secondly, it seeks to govern the suitable social and sexual relationship of men and women in different castes. What should be the social system? Who shall mix with each other? What should be the sexual relation between men and women? And for the first time, the system of matrimony was recognized on the social level. That was quite revolutionary at that time. When all the women used to be property of all the men, there was no systematic parenting. And that's why the patriarchal system was supreme. Because paternity was always a conjecture and maternity was a fact. But this Manusmriti, this reviled Shastra, which I call it Manav Shastra, as I said earlier, Manav Dharma Shastra, this has laid down for the first time the social order. Then it lays down the system of taxes. It lays down the rules for kingship, on maintaining marital harmony, and on the procedure for settling everyday disputes. So the complete judicial system has been laid out. So the judges and the magistrates and the panchayats, they go by that system. There is no miscarriage of justice. And at its core, Manusmriti discusses the life in the world, how it's lived in reality, and how it ought to be, what it is and what is the ideal. So you can always upgrade yourself and your society. So this is the first aspect, social. The second aspect is political. People often say that the text is about dharma, which means duty, religion, law, and practice. Agreed. But that was a systematic methodology adopted for the guidance of the management, for governance. It was a book of rules. It also discusses the aspects of Arthashastra, economics, political economy. Chanakya came much later, and his Arthashastra is famous, but then in reality, the basics of Arthashastra are here in this Manusmriti. For example, the issues relating to statecraft and legal procedures, as I mentioned earlier. Then the aim of the text was basically to present a blueprint, to present a format For a properly ordered, disciplined society. And how was it to be done? There has to be a system. There's a CEO, there's a chief operating officer, there's CFO in organization. In political system, there's the prime minister, or the president, the cabinets, and the legislature, and the judiciary, and the same thing. He said that the sovereignty of the kings under the guidance of Brahmins. So Brahmins were the counselors because they were educated. The fighting force was to be there by the Kshatriyas. The trading was to be done by the Vaishyas. And then, there was is nowhere mentioned that you cannot change from one profession to the other. There were no hard lines as far as the Manu is concerned. And basically, the book was a guideline to be read with the priest, and it would likely have been a part of the curriculum for the young Brahmin scholars in their gurukuls. The young princes would read it to know their responsibility as a princess. The fighters would need it to know how and when they should fight, what should be the cause of fight. The future kings would know what is the responsibility. Even the Vaishya, they were gurus. The gurukuls were not only about the higher classes, but even about the Vaishya. So what should be a trade practice? How not to cheat? What's the significance? By the early centuries of the Common Era, Manu had become and remained the standard source of authority on the orthodox tradition, and that became a centerpiece of Hinduism. And there's something, because for the first time in the history of the world, a systematic thing was laid out. And then Varnashram Dharam, social and religious ties, and those ties to the class and the stages of life, they were clearly spelled out. It was very significant text for the Brahmin scholars, for the rulers, for the justice givers, and for the people. And it attracted 9 commentaries by other writers of the tradition, and was cited, Manusmriti was cited by other Asian texts far more frequently than any other Dharma Shastra. So Manu Dharma Shastra is the most well cited, well referred to text. And how did the colonists, when the Britishers came, how did they consider this text? That's the tragedy. They misinterpreted. They purposely wanted to reveal the negative aspects. That has been a part of it. Suppress the truth, suppress the falsehood. The European Orientalists considered Manusmriti to be great historical. That's a fact. The scholars thought it to be great historical and religious significance, as well as the first Sanskrit text to be translated into European language. The first translation was done in 1794 by Sir William Jones. He was a British philologist. And he was so impressed, he says, even today, he has written that, even today, the book of this scholarly should be venerated, thoroughly digested, and followed. Subsequently, Manusmriti was translated into French. It was translated into German, Portuguese, and Russian. And then it was included in Max Muller's edited volume, Sacred Books of the East, in 1886. And that's where I read it. For colonial officials in British India, the translation of the book served a practical purpose. In 1772, British Governor General Vaughan Hastings decided to implement the laws of Hindus and Muslims that they believed to be continued unchanged from the antiquity. Now, here's the fault. They did not see that in 3,000 odd years, the things have changed. The caste system and the other system and the gender imparity had changed visibly. But that was not taken into consideration because they wanted to create a divide between the Hindus and Muslims. So they took the hardcore Muslim. And that's why the Muslims in India are much more fundamentalist in thought than even in Egypt and Saudi Arabia. However, same happened to Hindus. Because of this stress on negative aspects, they became more fundamentalist. For Hindus, the Dharma Shastra was to play a crucial role as they were seen by the British as laws, even though they were not being used in India. They thought, no, this is a Hindu law, it must be implemented. The question arises, why is this book then so controversial? Let me tell you, the ancient text has four major divisions. First is the creation of the world. Second is the source of dharma. Third is the dharma of the four social classes. Then the law of karma, rebirth, and moksha, the final liberation. And the third section is the longest and the most important section, the dharma of the four social classes. Now, the text is deeply concerned with maintaining the hierarchy of the fourfold Varna system and the rules that each caste has to follow. Of course, as I said, this was because of the topical local reasons. Agreed. He should have been able to foresee that nothing is permanent and things are likely to change. So some sense of fluidity should have been there. Some hint of change should have been there. It could have been other things remaining the same, which we use in economics even now. Pari passu, this should be there. Now, Brahmin is assumed to be the perfect representative of the human race. Now, here, and Shudras were relegated to the bottom of the order, given the sole duty of serving the upper caste. Here that was a mistake. It should have been clarified that this is subject to change. Some verses also contain highly prejudicial statements against women on the basis of the birth. The Shudra woman would definitely be bad. A Brahmin woman will definitely be a Devi, a goddess. No, that's wrong. And on December 25, 1927, Dr. Ambedkar had famously burned the Manusmriti, which is why the source of gender and caste oppression. And now, let me see, with all my respect to Dr. Ambedkar, this was not a source. This was a base, but it should have been changed. If a book is written 5,000 years before, it's again the same thing as if you start burning Shakespeare's works today because it contains the word Negro, which is now a prohibited word. But let's not deny it that and give credit to Dr. Ambedkar that he said Manu is not a religious degree, it's not a dictate, but it's a social doctrine, and it has been manipulated for centuries to normalize oppression of the population. And here I agree with him. The fault is not with the Manusmriti. The fault is with the interpretation. The fault is with the exploitation in the name of Manusmriti, and thereby hangs a tail. By itself, this is, as I said, the first codified social, judicial, management system book, which ought to be cherished and should be a guideline, but not something which is inviolable. Thank you.